Muriel Bowser. I am Mayor of Washington, D.C., and I'm honored to come before this committee to ask this Congress to right the wrong that happened 220 years ago when the residents of the District of Columbia were stripped of their full congressional representation. 2 years ago, on the 116th, I came before this committee under the leadership of the late Elijah Cummings to dispel erroneous arguments against D.C. statehood. These are bad faith arguments, and I'm sure we will hear them time and time again this morning. They say Washington, D.C. statehood is unconstitutional, even though constitutional experts have refuted this claim. Article 1 of the Constitution is not an obstacle. As H.R. 51 makes clear, a federal district will remain for the federal government, its buildings and its workings. And the rest of the area where people live will become the 51st state. They say Washington, D.C. is too small. Our economy is not diverse enough, even though we're bigger by population than 2 states and pay more per capita than any state. We pay more in total federal taxes than 22 states. They say Washington, D.C. can't take care of itself. This is simply not accurate. In fact, by many objective measures, D.C. is a better governed jurisdiction than most states. We have balanced our budgets for 25 times in the last 25 years. And we already operate as a state and perform the same functions as states do. During the coronavirus pandemic, for example, we have led COVID-19 testing, contact tracing, and vaccination efforts, just as states do. And we are treated like a state in more than 500 citations in federal law. Again, 2 years ago, we debunked those claims as thinly veiled attacks on our political leanings and, quite frankly, on our diversity and history of Black political power. Today, I come to urge this committee and this Congress to move beyond the tired, non-factual, and frankly, anti-democratic rhetoric and extend full democracy to the residents of the District of Columbia.
These 51-star flags right here and the scale of this display all the way up Pennsylvania Avenue from the Wilson Building here to 3rd Street at the foot of the Capitol.
Statehood!
Brilliantly defiant, according to D.C. residents demonstrating for D.C. statehood. 67-year-old veteran and retired D.C. prosecutor Bernie Seiler fires up a crowd of statehood demonstrators this morning by climbing a ladder with a 51-star flag.
Some brave men stood on Breed's Hill in 1775 and faced down the British, shouting, "Taxation without representation is tyranny." Tyranny still exists until that 51st star goes up there.
Yes.
Seiler and D.C. veterans, along with the flag, were the stars of this demonstration today, which included a busload of protesters led by Mayor Bowser parading under the flags up Pennsylvania Avenue as Congress prepares to debate D.C. statehood for the first time in 25 years.
I felt like I was doing that for all the veterans that lived in D.C., that fought for our country, and never had to vote to determine whether they had to go or not.
People have died for our country and aren't represented simply from a vote in Congress.
We've been going off to war and fighting this battle for over hundreds of years.
The 51st star looks good on there. It should have been on there a long time ago.
It's the flag that represents all tax-paying Americans, and it's the flag our nation deserves.
We want everybody across these United States of America to know that we are just like them. We pay taxes just like they do. We send our people to war just like they do.
D.C.
At Constitution and 3rd Northwest, Scott Broom, WUSA.
For 60 years, 50 states, but Congress is now one step closer to adding another.
D.C. statehood is an idea whose time has come.
The House passing a bill that would make Washington, District of Columbia, the state of Washington Douglas Commonwealth, honoring abolitionist Frederick Douglass. The mayor would become the new governor, and the 700,000 plus people living in D.C., who already pay the most federal taxes per capita, would get federal voting rights, including 2 new senators. That would almost certainly mean 2 more Democrats, given D.C.'s political leanings, with the GOP intensely opposed to statehood.
Democrat support is really about of H.R. 51. Democratic partisanship, Democrat power.
Some Republicans argue D.C. is too small.
D.C. wouldn't even qualify as a singular congressional district.
It does have more people than Vermont or Wyoming. Some have argued D.C.'s not Wyoming.
Wyoming is a well-rounded, working-class state.
Democrats blast that as thinly veiled racism.
I had no idea there were so many syllables in the word white.
And one Republican argued this.
D.C. would be the only state without an airport, without a car dealership.
D.C. does have car dealerships, and the Constitution doesn't mention those anyway. As for the Founding Fathers, some conservatives say they never intended that the nation's capital become a state.
Anybody who knows a law book from a J. Crew catalog knows it's unconstitutional.
Constitution that says the district cannot become a state.
If that happens, D.C. would have the highest percentage of black residents in the country. Top Democrats frame statehood as a civil rights issue. And supporters include the Biden administration, about half of all voters nationwide, and a lot of folks who call the district home.
It makes me feel as if I am being robbed of a right that I should have.
It feels that my voice in Congress is not represented.
There's also the security component that Democrats point to, saying that D.C. should be able to make its own decisions about things like the National Guard, something that came up in particular after the Capitol siege on January 6th. But the bottom line here, because of the opposition, because of the fight in the Senate, unless there is some kind of rules change in that chamber, you probably don't have to run out to buy a redesigned American flag anytime soon.